All right, so again, we're going to continue with Indian mathematics, and we're going to actually develop, we're going to follow the development of the symbolic numerals that we use. So we should look briefly at the Indian mathematics of the place value decimal system of numbers later. First, however, we go back to the first evidence of mathematics developing in India as far as the numerals go. Histories of Indian mathematics used to begin by describing the geometry contained in the Sylvostris, but research into the history of Indian mathematics has shown that the essentials of this geometry were older, being contained in the ultra construction described in the Vedic mythology text, the Shatapatha Brahmana and the Taittiriya Samhita. And again, apologies for the poor pronunciation. We're going to have a lot of that. It has been shown that the study of mathematical astronomy in India goes back to at least the third millennium BC, and mathematics and geometry must have existed to support this study in those ancient times. Some of you even talked about Bhaskara II, that's an Indian mathematician, and their work with astronomy. Or was it Bhaskara I? Anyway. So Indian numerals, this is around the 1st century AD. These are Brahmi numerals. And this has, we can kind of see the 6 and 7, right? We can kind of see those forming. Some might say you can see 4 forming. 1, 2, 3 dashes, H, 6 and 7 look similar. 8 does it. And maybe when I'm lazy, that 9 looks like a 9. There is no problem in understanding the symbols 1, 2, and 3. However, the symbol for 4 through 9 appear to us to have no obvious link to the numbers they represent. There have been quite a number of theories put forward by historians over many years as to the origin of these numerals. Ifra, a historian, listed a number of hypotheses which have been put forward. So the Brahmi numerals came from the Indus Valley culture around 2000 BC. The Brahmi numerals came from the Armenian numerals. The Brahmi numerals came from the Kharosthi alphabet, and the Brahmi numerals came from the Brahmi alphabet. Brahmi numerals came from an earlier alphabetic numerical system, possibly due to Panini, or the Brahmi numerals came from Egypt. So there is much debate, and there's a lot of historians in each one of these who think their theory is right. But reality is they can't all be right, or maybe they can, depending upon timings. So the first 9 Brahmi numerals constituted the vestiges of an old indigenous numerical notation, where the 9 numerals were represented by the corresponding numbers of vertical lines to enable the numerals to be written rapidly. In order to save time, these groups of lines evolved in much the same manner as those of old Egyptian pharaonic numerals, taking into account the kind of material that was written on in India over the centuries, tree bark or palm leaves, and the limitations of the tools used for writing, a calamus or a brush. The shape of the numerals became more and more complicated with the numerous ligatures until the numerals no longer bore any resemblance to the original prototypes. This is the first 9 that I just showed are where we start to see them breaking away. Like this, or this, or this. Those are easy to see. 1, 2, 3. And before, 4 would have been 4, 5, right? But they would be like that, but they changed them to make them easier to write, and that's what I showed you. Because at this point, this is the same as counting with dots or sticks. Here's what we know. This is a guess. This is Ifra's guess for pre-Brahmi numbers. He has them up and down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. All the way up to 9. You'll notice there's no 0 yet. And there's no place value yet. They would be difficult to distinguish place values. It'd be hard to tell whether that was 1, 12, 2, 12, or that was 3. It'd be hard to tell. So that's what I mean by place value. One might have hoped for evidence such as discovering numerals somewhere on this evolutionary path. However, it would appear that we will never find convincing proof for the origin of the Brahmi numerals. If we examine the route which led from the Brahmi numerals to the present symbols and ignore the many other systems which evolved from the Brahmi numerals, then we next come to the Gupta symbols. The Gupta period is that period which the Gupta dynasty ruled over Magadha state in northeastern India. And this was from the early 4th century AD to the late 6th century. And the Gupta numbers developed from the Brahmi numerals and were spread over large areas by the Gupta Empire as they conquered territory. Here we have the Gupta numbers. And you'll notice they're using the 1, 2, and 3, same as the Brahmi. And then you'll see a 4 that kind of looks like maybe. The 6 kind of less than it did. 7 is still pretty good. 8 kind of looks like a 5 now, and 9 looks like a 3. So this is around the 4th century. We see some that look similar to what we know, and then some that don't. The Nagari numerals, so the Gupta numerals evolved in the Nagari numerals, sometimes called the Devanagari numerals, and this form evolved from Gupta numerals around the 6th century AD, and it continued to develop from forward to the 11th century. The name literally means the writing of the gods. That's how they valued mathematics. And it was considered the most beautiful of all forms which evolved. Comments include what we, referring to the Arabs who had wrote this, use for numerals is a selection of the best and most regular figures in India. And here we are. And this is when we see 0, and it looks like a 0. We see 2 and a 3 that look like 2 and 3. But then 4 kind of looks like an 8. And 5 looks like a 4. And 7 looks like a 6. Technically 8 still kind of looks like a 5. 1 looks like a 9. Right? So some of this is looking good, some of this is not, but you'll see how it's coming together. Indian mathematics. So the oldest dated Indian document, which contains a number written in the place value form used today, is a legal document dated 346 in the Chehedi calendar, which translates to a date in our calendar of 594 AD. This document is a donation charter of Dada III of Sanketa in the Brahukachak region. The only problem with it is that some historians claim that the date has been added as a later forgery. I think if I recall right, that later time it would have been added was like 800 or 900 AD. So like 200 or 300 years later, or 300 or 400 years later, which makes it a forgery, but still incredibly old. Although it was not unusual for such charters to be modified at a later date, so that the property to which they referred could be claimed by someone who was not the rightful owner, there seems no conceivable reason to forge the date on this document. Therefore, despite the doubts, we can be fairly sure that this document provides evidence that a place value system was in use in India by the end of the 6th century. All right, some highlighting. We have Al-Khwarizmi, first book on algebra, natural numbers, equations. We're going to end with Leonardo da Vinci. In the next section, I'm going to talk about medieval mathematics, and then we'll end with him. All right. Get those.